Right, so when it comes to the US and its official position on Israel, unwavering in its staunch support for that state, regardless of the atrocities it is carrying out against the people of Palestine, for as much as they might claim to be supporting their ally in their hour of need against those who would wish harm upon them from Palestine, fundamentally it comes down to money, of course. They don't say that, obviously. They choose to hide behind a fake imagery of Jewish identity instead. And certainly in the US, the leading source for that, without doubt, is AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, easily one of the largest, if not the largest, pro-Israel lobbying groups on the planet. We see similar lobbying groups in other countries. Here in the UK, for example, we have BICOM, or We Believe in Israel, which is an offshoot of BICOM, whose former director, somehow after years of failing to get onto the Labour Party National Executive Committee, as it happens, all of a sudden, under Keir Starmer's leadership, topped the vote. And he then went on to give himself as safe seat as he was able to do in that position to now sit as a Labour MP. But why does this nation, Israel, require such lobbying on its behalf? When you think about it, the answer is actually quite simple. When you're in the wrong, and you know you're in the wrong, but you have no intention of changing course from being in the wrong, you need people on your side. You need politicians in your pocket and religion on your side. And who could forget that this is all about the Jewish faith too, of course. Well, of course, that last part actually is a nonsense. But when you criticise the lobbyists, or indeed the bodies they operate through, the lobbying organisations like AIPAC, you of course invariably get called a racist for calling them out. Well, it isn't racist to do so. It has nothing to do with Judaism. And a leading New York rabbi has absolutely dismembered the notion in this excoriating clip.
AIPAC is not a Jewish organization. Who appointed them as representatives of the Jewish people or the Jewish community? And who elected their officials? As American Jews, we are loyal to this country. We vote for the benefits of the United States. We have no dual loyalty. The only factor which deems a group Jewish is if they actually follow the Torah and what Judaism dictates. Let them call themselves whatever name they want, but certainly not Jewish.
Right, so that was rather emphatic, wasn't it? That was Rabbi Moshe Silverstein speaking there at the Grand Central Synagogue in Brooklyn, New York. The clip kindly used with the permission of the Torah Jews organization, who were founded in 2002 by a group of Orthodox Jews from various communities who came together to, on one hand, reach out to their fellow Jews to spread the word on the Torah's view of exile, redemption, and Jewish statehood, and on the other hand, to spread a message that the state of Israel does not represent Jews or Judaism, and this is particularly relevant to anyone accused of anti-Jewish hatred for criticising Israel. An awful lot of Jewish people themselves would be in full agreement with you for doing so. You can find these lovely folk at TorahJews.org, or absolutely give them a follow on Twitter. You can find them under @TorahJews. But anyway, back to the video clip itself, effectively tearing AIPAC a new one insofar as their claims to be in any way a Jewish representative body go. AIPAC is not a Jewish organisation, Rabbi Silverstein said. Who appointed them to such a lofty perch? Nobody. They position themselves as such, don't they? Nobody elected them to speak on behalf of an entire religion. No nationalist organisation. Clue is in the name. American Israel Public Affairs Committee. So not British, not French, not anywhere else. So certainly not Jewish citizens of any other countries either. But as Rabbi Silverstein also made abundantly clear, they don't even represent American Jewry. Because whilst AIPAC claims to be a Jewish representative organisation, they are an American-Israeli dual entity. AIPAC was literally created by an Israel lobbyist, an ardent Zionist, Canadian-born apparently, just to confuse matters further, called Isaiah Keenan. But his lobbying was never on behalf of Jewish people, it was on behalf of Israel, and this is a crucial difference. And it's one that too many people with vested interests try to erase and rub out and muddy the waters over. Rabbi Silverstein certainly dismisses the notion of any loyalty to Israel in that clip because his congregation, as he says, are loyal American Jews. They are American. They are not Israeli. So they shun any notion of being represented by any group claiming to be a dual body of such a nature. And the next line Rabbi Silverstein said shouldn't even need saying, actually. It's so obvious, it's maddening. But strip things back to exactly what makes somebody Jewish. Take Israel, take America, take all the politics out of the equation for a minute and just think about what makes somebody Jewish. And this goes for any religion, really. But to be Jewish, does it not simply mean, as Rabbi Silverstein said, that you simply follow the teachings of, in this case, the Torah, though any religious text for whatever religion is relevant to the conversation at the time, you can put in place of Torah there, and live your life by them? Nothing else comes into it, really, does it? It's a moral code. Let AIPAC call itself whatever it wants, he said, but certainly not Jewish. Well, certainly doesn't seem to be much in the way of morality about such a group that funds pro-Israel interests, is there? AIPAC functionally needs to be thought of in terms we can all relate to wherever we are, because Israel, to justify what it does, justify the political doctrine that brought it into existence, Zionism, which shrouds itself in the facade of Judaism, but has nothing to do with it, defend its right to exist, which, being based entirely on imperialism and colonialism, is on shaky ground all day long. And therefore Israel interests, pro-Israel interests, lobby, and they do so very successfully. But in no way, shape or form should they be thought of in terms other than as the Israel lobby, or the Zionist lobby, and actually should be thought of as itself, to my mind, as an anti-Semitic entity, since it reinforces a blood libel, a trope, that Jewish citizens in the US have this dual nationality, and that where they might claim to be loyal Americans, when push comes to shove, the claim is they'll revert to tribalism. This is, I'm sure, why Rabbi Silverstein made this particular point so emphatically, because this foments distrust of Jewish people in the States by an organisation that claims to represent them and doesn't even do that in actuality. What AIPAC does is make a complete and utter menace of itself in politics, and is, in my view, the leading reason why a resolution in Israel isn't going to be forthcoming from the US, because they are not just a propaganda arm for the Israel lobby. They are the financial arm of that lobby as well, and that influence has ensured that the Democratic Party and the US foreign policy that comes out of the United States, and has done for years now, is dictated in no small part by them and their pro-Israel proclivities. At the end of the day, their copious lobbying and their campaign funding all ends up making sure that no matter how bad Israel get, how badly they behave, how badly they conduct themselves, how much of a global pariah they become, US presidents always come down on their side, and Democrat senators certainly don't criticise them either, since AIPAC have the clout to make life rather difficult for them. And we are, after all, talking big money here as well. So far, this election campaign in the US, AIPAC have coughed up over $100 million, and a lot of that is being used not to forward American democracy, but their own perverted version of it, which has Israel at its centre. Take candidate selections in the US. Any Democratic Party candidate not seen as 100% loyal? Well, AIPAC has been working to replace them. You see, they'll recruit their own candidates, fund them handsomely, spend a fortune on ads promoting them, run them against a Democrat candidate they aren't so keen on, and they've had some success in doing that, as a defeat of progressive Democrats like Cori Bush in favour of an AIPAC-sponsored candidate has shown, tainting the Democrats into a party with far more of a dual loyalty than any American Jews are accused of. Where does all that AIPAC money come from, incidentally? Well, that's the rub, really, isn't it? Because that'll be Republican Party billionaires on the most part. AIPAC is basically MAGA funded, so effectively no matter who wins the next US presidential race, nothing would change with regards to the US position on Israel. But from a democracy standpoint, how can it be healthy if so much Republican money can be spent in Democratic primaries to influence which Democrats actually end up winning? And of course we see that in the actions of Joe Biden reflected as well, don't we? And we've seen Kamala Harris opine in the last day that nothing will change regarding Israel with her in charge, despite being confronted with the news that Israeli forces fired again on an aid convoy. Happens so often now we're barely even surprised it even carries on. In this case, it was a UN Food Relief Agency vehicle with all the associated UN livery plastered across it. Plenty of people have asked, given the conduct of the US government, well, whose side are they on? And well, AIPAC in no small part has ensured it stays the way it does and will spend however much it needs to in light of Israel's barbarity to ensure that US politicians remain firmly on Israel's side, regardless of which side wins. That explainer of AIPAC didn't infer the Jewish faith once, you might note, because of course it really doesn't have anything to do with it, just as Rabbi Moshe Silverstein has said. Everything Israel does, and able to do so with US money, is thanks to the influence of AIPAC. It isn't done in the name of, well, it is done in the name of the Jewish faith, but that actually is completely untrue. It has nothing to do with the Jewish faith. And it's a bastardization of the Jewish faith to include that. It isn't done due to the teachings of the Torah, after all, is it? It's done to promote a foreign state with too much influence in the politics of another. And it's not unique to the US either. You can see it in Keir Starmer here in the UK. The pro-Israel lobby donations he's had, which saw him become Labour leader and now Prime Minister. And despite the Zionist influence on his government, UK foreign policy has for years been dictated by the US. And if US foreign policy is dictated by AIPAC, well, now you might see why the West is in such a mess as far as Israel goes. Why it is consistently too weak. Why it won't end arms sales. Why they leave themselves open to potential charges of complicity and genocide yet to come. It's all about money. Nothing to do with faith. But that faith will get used to shield the money men from criticism. If that isn't racist, if that isn't inciting hatred towards people of that faith, well, I really don't know what is. Meanwhile, if you don't think vested interests are trying to mute people who might be speaking out about such things, a second journalist has now been arrested here in the UK for daring to commit what now seems to be the crime of speaking out against Israel. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your next watch. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.